Truth in Its Art. I am your host, Rob Lee. Thank you for joining me for my conversations at the intersection of arts, culture, and community. Today, I've got a wonderful guest. I'm looking forward to speaking with Jason Steer. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a true pleasure to be here. I've listened to your work.
Thank you.
Been very impressed with the kind of conversations that you've had in the past, and excited to see where you'll take me today.
We're going to go on a journey, I think. And I feel a little bad. I'm not wearing my pretentious art guy glasses.
Got it.
I have the circular ones. I wear with a scarf. I have my black shirt on. This is intentional. Before we get into like the main crux of the conversation, right? I got these questions and all of that. I want to start off. You gave me the extensive background. You know what I mean? But I still will lobby it back to you. Yeah. Because I think a lot of times when we have the online thing, we have the artist statements, the bios, inevitably something is missing. You know what I mean? It's like I've interviewed folks and I'll say, journalist, this, I'll name 10 different things, right? And it's like, you forgot I'm also a boxer. I'm like, wow, where did that come from? It's not the bio. So if you will, could you tell us a bit about yourself, sort of that elevator intro speech? Okay. And, a bit about your work.
Okay. All right. So what's not on there? So art has always been, born and bred in London, right? London, England, raised within a Caribbean family. Shout out to all the yardies that's listening to the podcast today. And coming from a Caribbean family, creativity is not necessarily a go-to space.
Sure.
We're very practical people. We want to be, it's engineering, mechanics, doctors, typical kind of colonialist mentality. This is what success looks like going forward, right?
Sure.
Being practical. So me saying I want to be a creative, they were like, you want to draw? What will drawing do for you? Because from that lens, that's what creative means. You're a drawer. What can you do being a drawer? And I was like, well, I'm not sure, but I love that experience, right? I'm a person that grew up. I'm of that generation where I was watched all the early anime. Like Akira is one of the biggest things that changed my perspective. I'm a kid that watched Garfield, and I used to draw and illustrate Garfield in my notebook everywhere I went because I thought the illustrations were dope. That's who I was as a kid, right? And comic books, I was a proper little comic book head. You know what I mean? That's why X-Men, gonna geek out. If you're in this world, geek out. X-Men, 97? Chef's Kiss. Because that was my era. I grew up from that. I have those comic books, right? Of Storm fighting against Cyclops for the leadership of the X. So this is my era as a high school kid, right? Yeah. That's my era. So growing up in that space, that was my escape. I was able to do that. I went to art college in London. I transferred to Surrey Institute for Art and Design and studied industrial design, which basically means I studied to be a blacksmith, right? And people always look at me turn their heads to the side blacksmith? That's a thing? And I'm a person of color, so it's really? You? And yeah, it was really, really exciting to be in this, in a shop. And the sparks and the intimidation of fire and the understanding the mechanisms that, manipulating of materials was powerful to me in the sense of, I go big to large gates to small jewelry pieces, but each of them required technique and dedication and understanding, and it's a really, really dope experience for me. And that kind of informed who I was, as I moved in as my young adultness. But also in the same way, I was able to. I also grew up in a space where we had the Creative Alliance has a Creativity Center. Yeah. Growing up, I had something similar. It was called a play center for us, where it was legitimately just a space to play and grow and explore and create and have fun with your friends. And that was a space that I eventually developed skill sets to kind of take over. I was running those kind of spaces back in London for a number of years. So that kind of career where creating space, creating programming, creating spaces where people could explore and find themselves was really, really kind of like part of what took me to where I'm at today, right? And that's where that's how my journey's continued. So going forward. So I'm rambling, so I'm going to stop right there.
See, the thing is, right? Thank you, for one. I enjoy when people think that they're rambling because you're just making my job easier. You're knocking out questions that I have later, which is great. And also it speaks to what's at the forefront for what's on a guest's mind when they're doing their. I like to leave it like what's up there for you?
Right.
Go on. And so I want to talk a bit about kind of moving towards parts of the career. I want to talk about your experience at Apollo Theater. I could talk about that a bit. So, like, how did that come about? What was that experience like? And, what did it kind of teach you around sort of those intersections between community, arts, culture?
Ooh, you and your good questions. Okay, so the Apollo Theater came about. I was working in Connecticut. I was working for the city of Stamford within their youth services space, and the opportunity for the Apollo came about because of the kind of work I was doing. Right, so I was doing workforce development internships, but for corporations.
Sure.
Right, and I ended up working within the education space within the Apollo. Right, so for the audiences, obviously the Apollo is a world-renowned, one-of-one Black theater. Right, the history is legendary in the sense of who's walked through the doors, and that small theater's impact on the world itself. Right, and who presented there. I literally did a small presentation on this yesterday to a group of individuals from an organization called Tender Bridges. Phenomenal organization. So moving on to your question, so I joined that organization knowing that they had a clear North Star.
Sure.
We are here to be a space for people of color to exhibit their work, incubate their work, present their work, and celebrate them, right? And the lens I had coming through is like, if I have this beautiful, amazing tool, and I call it a tool because the access points that I was able to create is going to your point about community, right? How do I engage with the community and get them to see the opportunities that exist within the theater space for a person of color, right? So it's theater, it's music, it's entertainment, but there are hundreds of jobs within that space, right? Carpentry, audio, lighting, projection, video, front of house, logistics, administration. There's ridiculous amounts of jobs in that space. So having an opportunity to engage and open a door for a young person or a young adult to experience what the Apollo is behind the curtains was amazing, right? And in the sense of allowing a teenager to walk in at the age of 16, produce a show, because that's what they ended up doing, producing a legitimate show, and then recognizing that their idea that was in their head maybe 6 months, 8 months ago is actually in front of them. And I'm talking about them saying, I want to present 3 singers, 2 dancers, a rapper, and I also want to have some gallery work happening. All right, cool.
Yeah.
Let's make that happen. What are the decisions that you need to make? How are you going to make them? What information do you need? How are you going to market it? How are you going to engage with your audience? How are you going to keep them excited? What is the tempo of your show? Right? All of these conversations had to happen, right? But through that process, they really got to see and learn themselves, right? They got to see and understand whether or not I feel comfortable in this space. They're taking the lead, right?
Yeah.
I need to talk to a collection of adults. I need to talk to the marketing department about, a social campaign, or I need to talk to the marketing department like, well, here's my vision for my show and this is what we'd like it to look like. Can you help us out?
Sure.
And then, working from there. And what does that mean? That means that it allowed not only that demographic, that community, that young audience but it also gave the Apollo, who was seen as an old institution, a new lens, right, and a new access point, right. I was able, through that method of working with young people, I did VR panels, I did screenwriting panels, I did cinematography panels, I tried to go into spaces, literally developing a dramaturge panel in June. I produced panels or introduced careers to young adults that really didn't know that they existed, or that we as a people of color were in, and we were crazy successful, right? Like, I did an interview with Paul Tiswell, who was literally, that year when I interviewed him, he was nominated for his first Oscar for costume design, right, for West Side Story.
Yeah.
But his catalog was ridiculous, and I was just super dope, excited, because for me, because of my age and hearing about Apollo stories, you always heard about the time someone said, I was talking to James Brown, or talked to Aretha Franklin, or I was talking to some legend, some god, right? Yeah. They were like just so flippant with it, like, yeah, I was but I was so not so much impressed by who they spoke to, but the lessons that person shared. Yeah. Right. So I always wanted to get into the spaces where I got to sit at the feet of a master and listen. Right. Just listen, like listening to Paul about his approach to his work and the research that he does, and how he took on this subject or took on that subject. And I also got to speak to a younger designer, and I wanted to pair a younger designer who's just coming up in their career with someone with a master like Paul, and see what conversations were going to happen, right? And that's how I was able to kind of push these theories and these ideas out to the community and engage the community in that way, right? Get them excited about areas and spaces that I'm curious from, right? I'm curious about this, so let me walk into that space and bring people along with me, right? We did a thing, it's called Footprint, right? And it was with a partnership with a sneaker designer. People aren't seeing sneaker design as like, okay, sneaker design, the Apollo Theater. No, it's about being a creative, right? Mm-hmm. It's about being a creative and how sneaker design has impacted a lot of the community. And once again, speaking to a younger demographic, like sneakers has become a thing and still is a thing. So just speaking to them in their tongue, as well as really trying to engage the community in, hopefully in things that they will find interesting, as well as exciting. There's a crap ton more I'll share, but I'll hand it back to you.
No, I appreciate that. And this is not on mic, because we talked about it beforehand, but you'd ask like why reach out to you or have you. I'm getting that. It's like I'm trusting my process. I've heard comics, I've heard sneakers, I've heard talking to the masters, and all. It's like, look, it's just right here. But it's important, I think, to one of the things you'd mentioned, or one of the things I gleaned from it, sort of that exposure piece. Mm-hmm. And when there's folks that look like you and I being in a spot that, I'll put it this way, I've been a podcaster for 15 years, right? Yeah. I've done some creative things. I want to be a comic book artist. That was the previous career. Yeah. And I've heard in this 15 years, how I present, you don't look like one of them. You don't look like a podcaster. I was like, what does that even mean? Right. And then when folks see what I'm doing and understand what I'm doing, suddenly teaching gigs and other opportunities start presenting themselves, because the skill and the background is there. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times where I might fall short and where I might become frustrated, and I think this sentiment is across multiple sectors of folks that look like us, it's not having the exposure. It's like you don't know, you're misinformed or Correct. You're underinformed as it relates to it, because that opportunity hasn't been there to do it. As I do this and want to kind of see it to whatever that next stage is, I have other people who, frankly, I think aren't qualified, that will tell me, you should lessen what your vision is. I'm like, now I'm moving into a producer mindset and broadening it. Yep. And it's like, it can be this, it can have that rapper, it can have that sneaker show, it can have all of these different elements. It's all audio. That's going to be weird, but still.
I think you're in the right vein, right? It's the conversation about podcasting has been a popular format of communication, or if you want to go back, radio, right? Because radio was it for us. Well, radio was it for me as a kid. Like in London, it was pirate stations, right? And so a lot of my information used to come from there. A lot of the characters, a lot of the conversations, a lot of the dialogue was coming literally from radio, and podcasting actually was a platform that blew up during, well, I think more during the pandemic or even before the pandemic. So yeah, where does this form go? Where does this particular art form go? Where can we explore? And it's really about, and you've seen it happen where podcasts turn into these live stage productions, right? We've had at the Apollo, I've seen a ton of them where they've got, and I'm thinking it's at 95 South, 95 West, I forgot.
95 South, yeah.
95 South, right? They came to the Apollo, and once again, it was a live presentation, right? Sold out tickets. It's nothing, I'm not saying it's new, but the format is what it is. I'm getting a live response from my audience. But rather than it just being two voices, now you're gonna hear me crack a joke, and then you're gonna hear real laughter and which creates a level of authenticity around it. So, you know, what is the authenticity that I'm trying to present to my audience through the work that I'm doing, right? Yeah. So it's dope when so keep on going, like just keep on pushing. You'll see your fruits of your labor will be seen, and people will be like,
I hope the fruits are maybe pineapple and peach. I don't know, it's a Caribbean thing.
I hear you.
So I want to talk a bit about sort of your thought process when preparing new work. And this question comes up because I'm very curious. I steal from you guys. I steal from all of you creative types, all you artists. I'm like, all right, how can I apply this to what I do? And when I think through sort of like a season, I'm like, all right, the most flexible option is I can do everything remote, and then I kind of have sort of full control. And as I mentioned before we got started, being on a boat, it was like that's the least amount of control I've ever had.
Right.
And it's like, but you still got to do those things to really sharpen those skills that you have. So as far as like the preparation and the creative thinking process, can you speak a bit about, sort of the preparation, incubation, illumination, verification, all of those different stages within that process for you? And I have a second part to it, but I'll give you that, and then we can go. Yeah.
So because of who I've trained and how I've kind of what I've experienced and the variety of, as you heard me speak about, like the variety of spaces I've gone into, the process that I've taken on has been it's as simple as this. It's been ideation, incubation, and execution, right? Ideation, generating the ideas, having a fun time coming up with the ideas, seeing what sticks, seeing what doesn't stick, really playing with it. And then the incubation, sitting with it, right? Sitting with it really means asking the questions, right? So we did a career panel that was a deaf career panel. So one, it was something that the Apollo hadn't done before. Two, it was for a deaf audience exclusively, right? Once again, not an approach that had been done before, especially within our space. It was, so the idea, we're going to present a career panel within the arts for a exclusively deaf audience. All right, that's an idea. The incubation is who is in that space, right? Who from the deaf community, who's doing what, where, and when. We had DJs, we had rappers, we had dancers, we had filmmakers, right? And in that exploration and that incubation of walking through those spaces with each person and like spending time with them, understanding, educating them about our approach, that's where we really kind of got to substance, right? I.e., what mattered to them. What mattered to them, and then what matters to them, they get to tell their story and share it with our audience, right? And then even within the incubation space, it's how do we make sure that this is a space for both the deaf, the hearing, and the in-betweens, right? So it's understanding the technology that goes with it, right? And understanding, even myself, learning the innate biases that I may have around that community because I'm not in it, right? I'm not in it at all. So how do I engage? What is the appropriate way to engage? How do I think of it? And for me, the incubation is leaning into that community and asking that community to educate me. So therefore, when I'm presenting it based on the knowledge you've shared with me. So then the execution now is really about educating. For me, it's the crew, understanding the crew. For that particular panel, it was making sure that we had voiceovers. Right, we had voiceovers for the hearing community. It was voiceovers. It was transcribing, making sure there was literally someone that was typing out what was being said. So if because I didn't realize that there are some members of the deaf community who don't know how to sign.
Right.
But subtitles, if you will, make sure they were available. Right. And that's the process, being willing to ask the questions, obviously enjoying the process of ideation thinking, but then doing the rigor, having the desire to really be open to well, I don't know. Okay, who knows? Asking the questions, having the desire to be, and for me, authenticity is important, being authentic to that space that you're looking to enter into and seeing where that takes you, right? And then, because the execution is going to make it valid for you, or you're going to have to make some curatorial decisions based on the execution. I don't have a big enough space. All right, I'm going to have to reduce my timing, or I don't have enough money for my budget. So a show that I thought could work for 2 hours, I might have to move it down to 90 minutes, right? Because budgetary reasons, or I don't, someone doesn't show up, or whatever the myriad of reasons when it comes to the execution part, that will give you that space to kind of cut the fat, if you will, away from some of your pieces to really make you get to the final presentation piece.
So thank you. So the other part of it, and I think you touched on it, but I hate starting. It's a thing. It's just and I find when I get into a flow, before I came here, I like to be where I'm going to be early, just inevitably. Production, I don't know. And before coming here, I spent an hour, 2 hours, working on questions for next week.
Yeah.
That part is kind of fun. That's kind of the play piece of it, of I wonder how this person's going to answer this. Right. And even doing some of the research, when you find out, oh, you're into that?
Right.
Oh, we could talk a long time. Let someone mention New Orleans or Vermouth, as we were talking about earlier. Yeah. I'm really into that. But, sort of that lead up, it's a little bit of a challenge, right before. When we're into the conversation, that's the part that feels good. Right. The research, then the sort of and then the conversation is good, and then sort of afterwards putting it out there in the universe. Did it sound good? Did the guests enjoy themselves? Is the guests going to share the interview when it comes out? Those pieces, it's this sort of up and down. Cool, cool,
Right.
What's your favorite part of sort of your process, and what is the most difficult for you? What's the part that you're those are the Brussels sprouts?
Oh, it's okay. Another great question. So I'd say this. I think for me, I'm ideas. I'm an ideas person. I'm big picture person. I am we will do a podcast in a concert hall because I just want the acoustics to be the most dopest acoustics I can ever find. And I just think it just, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's me, right? How we get there, what goes into the content, enjoy it. The execution, the nitty gritty, that's when, having to cut back on my idea or whatever it is, that is not the funnest part for me. Because I will sit there, my staff here at the Creative Alliance, as well as back in the Apollo, would see me cringe at what I see on stage. Not because it's not great or amazing, but it's you know what I mean? I think with even with you, anybody that's been in the space long enough, they know what a moment looks like the perfect note, the perfect sound of the bat hitting a ball, the perfect ball rolling off your hand when you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we know there's a sense of like, oh my God, this was, even when you go out and you're hanging out with friends and you reflect like, oh shit, that was a dope night. Like the vibe was there. So I'm always looking for that when it comes to the execution of my work. Like, did it flow? How did it feel? What did the audience take from it? I was like, and I've gotten there a couple of times, but that's my standard. Mm-hmm. I want this, and I'm not saying it's impossible because I've experienced it, but I'm not going to get it all the time, but I'm never satisfied. So that's why I think the execution part is always going to be like kind of tricky for me, because, or the toughest part. It's not tricky, it's just the toughest part, because we've gotten over the road. And it's as simple as like a cue was, and this is me being mad picky, and hopefully someone out there can relate, where it's like something was needed to be cued 10 seconds before the singer came on stage, and they didn't cue it right, and it came like I know it. Like it's so. This is how silly it gets for me. And I went to go see The Wiz on Broadway. Yeah. And I'm watching the show. There's a scene on The Wiz. Oh no, it's not Wiz. Who's the one? Is it not The Wiz? It's is it The Wiz? The Green Witch? Wicked, sorry. Wicked. I went to go see Wicked, thank you. Yeah. So there's a moment where they're meeting the Wizard of Oz. There's this big head. It's just a head. It's being rolled out, coming down stage. But I can see the stage crew behind pushing this thing. I'm like flipping tables in my mind. I'm like, how could you? What's wrong? I was like, I got so, like, the show was good, but I was just pissed. Like, I'm not meant to see. And they were just strolling like, do. I'm like, no, this is not how it's meant to be. These spaces are magical. Like, I want, and once again, anything I look to put my hands to, I want it to be magical, because I want the audience to come away with an experience that they can't get anywhere else.
That's a good point. I echo the same thing. I'll give you an example in a moment. I'm going to go out and make an assumption. You're an air sign.
Ooh, am I an air sign? I'm a Gemini.
Yes. So yes. Yeah, I'm an Aquarius. So and my brother's a Gemini. So we talked about like, why was that done that way? Like, look, there's a thing like, obviously soccer, right? So the stoppage time, right? Yep. When I watch a movie with my partner, let's say it might be a 2-hour movie, it turns into a 3-hour one because I pause. I'm like, you see that right there? She's like, how did you see that continuity error or that hand that's not supposed to be there? I was like, look, if you got my attention, you shot attention, right? You edited this,
right? You made choices right there, sir. You made choices. Get it together.
So, and I think you touched on this, but if you want to, as far as this next question goes, and I'm still tripping off of that. It's really, really funny. Let's talk a bit about sort of maybe the more towards Creative Alliance related work, sort of the strategies that are in the hopper, strategies that you're employing to ensure that resources are allocated to artists from sort of marginalized communities. I've heard it in the trajectory or what have you, but sort of like the Baltimore related stuff.
So coming to Baltimore, and once again, this the transparency on my side. It's like I've been in this job for just over 3 months now. Yeah. Right. So understanding the landscape, 1. Understanding the culture within our organization, 2. 3, within that space, recognizing potential and opportunities, right? So with those kind of general strategies, I'm looking to see, and I'm going to look at so the Creative Alliance does a number of things. We present performers from around the world consistently. We also have an artist in residency program that serves, right now we have 8 artists in residence presenting or developing work, and they actually live in the building. Going to looking at resources, it's understanding, 1, who we are as an organization and what relationships we can build and develop to provide access or build upon the access that they may have or may not have. And I'm really speaking about the artists in residence, right? Sure. So, and then looking at the relationships I've built in different spaces. So it's not only fiscally, looking at funding and seeing what interests a funder, right? And it may not be the artist's work themselves, but is it the structure in which we build this program, right? So it's not necessarily workforce development, but if you can present to a funder that within a 3-year period, artist A will have one, they will actually be able to present their own work within a gallery. We provide them resources to do so.
Sure.
We will educate them on what does the economy look like for an artist. What does it look like to speak to or have access to other prominent artists or other gallery spaces? It is about how to expose them to other business outlets, right? Whether it's, have you thought about working with an interior design firm to get your work in other people's homes? Is it about working with a department store or a place that, where design and your pieces can be exhibited in a way that's different, right? It's looking at those strategies and making sure that they have access to those individuals, either directly through one-to-one relationships or through my position or the Creative Licenses relationship. It's also about thinking about what are the community's needs, right? And it's not necessarily, that doesn't have to come from a place of lack of, it's a desire for.
Sure.
Right? We run a program called Cielo, which works with a Hispanic population, and it really provides a space where they themselves can find community, they can find creativity, and they get to explore their history, their heritage from their lens, right? So is it about making sure that they have the space and the capacity to do so? And then what does the teaching look like around that? And then where else can they play, right? Where else can they have the fun to do what they do? In the sense of making sure they feel safe, right? Feel safe and secure about what they're doing. So those are some of the strategies, smaller strategies that I look at. But then some of the bigger stuff is about us making sure as Highlandtown, looking at all the other art districts and seeing where there is opportunity for us to work together collaboratively, right? And it's not about, it doesn't necessarily have to be one project. It could be, right now, it's always, I think it's First Fridays or the art Fridays that are happening in everybody's district, which is dope, and I think is a great idea. But we get an opportunity to kind of choose and decide on what this can look like going forward. And me being where I'm from and where I'm at now, I'm excited about seeing where else I can play. Going to your point about how do I start? I'm a big idea person. So for me, it's, all right, 4 districts, what can we do together? What is our uniqueness? And where within that uniqueness can we find some synergy?
Sure.
And then being responsible around that, right? Like, I've got this big idea, but how are we going to do it? Money. Who's got money? I don't have money. Okay, what can we really, really do?
Yeah.
Right? That's being responsible. But us committing to each other that this is what we intend to do and how it can support our community, right? Okay. And community in the larger sense, not just Highlandtown, not just the Station North or all the other areas. It's like community is in all of our spaces as a collective creative community. So those are some of the strategies that I'm thinking about and looking at. I know you have your intern here, but that's an indication for me, like the possibilities of developing workforce development, right? What does workforce development look like within the technical theater space, within the curatorial space?
Sure.
These are all avenues where you can develop a career and have some fun, really exploring and seeing what other people are doing. I'm lucky enough to be in this space where the level of creativity is at a 10 and 11, and I've just got to kind of like take it in and let it feed me. And I want to expand that. And Baltimore's about that. Definitely, Baltimore's about that life where it's like the creativity is everywhere and everybody enjoys it. How do we make sure that it's recognized, right? It's recognized as not just this, not a gimmicky thing, but this playful thing. Like, no, it's freaking serious. Like, people spend years upon years developing the skill sets required to kind of like present work. And, whether it's performative or visual. So, yeah.
So in that, because I think you're poking at it, was that the draw for coming to Baltimore, for coming to the Creative Alliance, as far as like, it's right here. it's the community is right. And I say that because one, I have to chime in. I'm an idea guy as well. And doing this, being able to sort of help document a lot of the stuff that's happening, archive a lot of the stuff that's happening from the people sharing their stories. And I'm just trying to provide a framework. And that's sort of the focus there. And I find a lot of times folks that, like you and I, our stories aren't considered as of the same value as others, or even, I'll even do this. Sometimes it's just the Baltimore thing. Oh, there's no artist there.
Right.
And then we're having someone like you with your background coming here and, you know, having these ideas and like the planning and the execution that's forthcoming and happening with, you know, as you mentioned, the artists in residence. So what was the driver for coming to Baltimore, coming to Creative Alliance?
The drive was, it's potential, right? The potential of, it's funny, my son loves Hamilton, the musical, right? I love it too, it's fantastic. But it's a space, the phrase that, there's a song where I want to be in a room where it happens, is prominent to mind, and that came up for me in looking to come down to Baltimore, where I know Baltimore is where it's going to be the place where either it is going to be the place where it happens. And what does that look like in the sense of an excitement, a place where work is bubbling, right? I said it when I was interviewed, when I just started. It's like, I described it as a gumbo, but really it's like this full of flavor space, right? And it's just simmering and simmering and simmering. And it's about developing, seeing what comes from that process, right? Like, I feel like some works have been executed and you're going to see different levels, but it's just constantly bubbling, and there's an energy here that I want to be involved in and want to play a part with, where I get to either support, I get to execute, I get to play in, where exciting, unique things can happen here. And it's so practical, like, you know, New York's different in the sense of who you have access to. Baltimore's a bit different. Like, I get to have access to people and places that allow me to be able to execute ideas. And like, legitimately, here's an idea, this is what could happen, right? So for me, it's looking at, that's what was exciting. And plus, the Creative Alliance is very similar to the Apollo, in the sense of it's a space where its prominent feature is about allowing creativity to grow and blossom. Yes, from the Apollo side, it was definitely for the BIPOC population, but this is similar in the sense of we want to create a space that creativity is the forefront, creativity and community is the forefront, and we lead from that perspective. And having a North Star in the way that Creative Alliance has makes it exciting, makes it easy for me to like get up and know the work that I'm going to do, because I know the direction they're going in and why they're going in that direction, right? The founders and all the amazing people that have come before me. And and the strange thing about it, I've gotten to meet a lot of the individuals that were like, I was here in the beginning, I was, you know, part of the board for almost 10, 15 years, and the love and passion that they show for this organization is something that I really hold intimately. And I'm like, no, I need to show up. Like, I know this, I've met the person that put this organization on their back. So you know what, if I've met that person and I've decided to step into this leadership role, I need to, you know, show up in the same way, right? So that's what brought me down to Baltimore and the Creative Alliance.
And see, that's almost, and I'm glad that's where we kind of are going to wrap at as far as the real questions, because that was almost a mic drop right there. I like that. So in these final moments, I want to rock with you a few rapid fire questions.
Okay.
You don't have those, so don't try to cheat. You know.
Okay, I'm looking, but I can't see them. All right, cool.
All right. So as I tell everyone, don't overthink these.
All right, go on.
And the first one goes. So I try to look for. I go to one place that has like English food, right?
Okay.
And me and my partner talk about it. It's like, you know, like this food here is very good. It's great food. She's like, what is English food again? What's the suggestion? Like, give us a dish, man.
No, all right. So the truth is this, right? And England. So the reality is this: England doesn't have its own food. It doesn't. It has obviously it's got. I'm laughing because what comes to mind is so British. So whoever's listening to this eventually, all right. So here what? So baked beans and toast, bangers and mash, toad in the hole, a mince pie, a Cornish pie, sausage roll. Like there are some dishes that are just unique to England and that just will not translate over here. If I recall correctly, and this was decades ago, like the most popular dish in England was, or I don't know if it still is Indian food, like tandoori chicken, and I mean that kind of Indian food is really, really popular. But all right. So for me, what would be a classic, and it's not even like a meal, a dinner. It's a breakfast, right?
Okay.
Like, this is a typical English for me, and because I'm just a commoner, I'm not sophisticated like that. This is just the local yokel stuff, right? Like you would get 2 pieces of toast, 2 eggs, sausages, right? Baked beans, not your American baked beans, Heinz baked beans. Let me just clarify for the folks at home. You cook tomatoes, right? You get your tomatoes, all right? And if you can get some, what do you call it over here? Steak sauce.
Okay.
There's a steak sauce. You put the steak sauce over the baked beans. Chef's kiss, mate. Tell you, it's not healthy at all. It's not healthy whatsoever, but it's delicious.
Okay.
It is delicious. Or there's a Kipling's apple pie and you pour over the Kipling's pie ambrosia custard. Yes, this is ambrosia custard that's done. It's in a can. Ugh, it's just delicious. It's fantastic.
Rob and Jason's food podcast coming soon.
Yes, join me next week.
Breaking down the English classics. This is an obvious question. Coffee or tea?
Ooh, it's always gonna be a tea. Coffee, I've moved over to coffee because this country's coffee, but I'm a tea person most of the time. At home, I'd have a nice biscuit, not a cookie. Right, you look at a cookie, so I'd have a lovely, nice cookie with a lovely cup of, like, this is when you know, if you can, this is how you know if you've caked a really, for an English person, this is how you know if you've really cooked a really great cake. If you cut that cake and I've looked at the cake and I tasted that cake and my response is, ooh, I need a cup of tea with this, that means you've cooked a really great cake.
That's good. And you for a second there, you made me think of this Hannibal Buress joke about flying. He was just like, man, he's like, I had a terrible month where, they kept calling cookies biscuits. He's like, I'm not calling them scones. He's like, I don't know what to call them.
Yeah, no, man, cookies, mate. Or biscuits. We call them biscuits.
This will be the last one. What are you currently watching? Are you binging anything, watching anything? You mentioned X-Men 97, obviously.
All right, so what have I been watching? X-Men, so anime is my space, right? So X-Men 97, oh shoot, I'd have to think, why have I gone blank on them?
New My Hero just dropped.
New My Hero's just come out, so I've seen the first episode. That's been a great arc. Shoot, there's been a ton of them. I just went through, they literally had on Netflix, they just had TP Bond, which is like Time Patrol Bond. Yeah. His name is. That's been fun to watch. I finally watched Dune 2.
Yeah.
Very, very happy. Can't wait for, the third trilogy, the last part. Super sci-fi fan, so love that. Damn it, I wish I had really had the list ready for you.
That's the point of it.
What else I've been watching? I'm a sports fan, and like the playoffs, basketball playoffs have been serious. Like, this has been one of the best playoff series I've seen in a long time. There's a collection of young bucks that are just like, woo! The emotions are there, the physicality is there, the passion is there. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's been some games. So that's been my spread so far.
It's wonderful.
Right.
That's kind of it. I want to do two things. I want to, one, thank you so much for being a part of this podcast.
My pleasure.
And two, I want to invite and encourage you to share with the listeners where they can follow you, check out Creative Alliance, all of that good stuff. Shameless plugs, really.
Okay.
Floor is yours.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, we've got a couple of things coming up. We've got Suam, which is a jazz fusion, Korean jazz fusion event happening this Friday. So I don't know if it's going to work for you guys. But anyway, follow us on Instagram. I think you'll find out most of our materials on Creative Alliance on Instagram. And then we've literally just finished so many different things. We do, we've got a couple of art galleries. We've got an art gallery presentation up right now. We just literally finished having a fashion design, as well as a Cranky Fest. We just had a Cranky Fest. If you haven't done Crankies, please check it out online. It's been amazing. The creativity and storytelling happens through that process is crazy, crazy dope. I'm gonna pause there because I should have had my list ready, but I don't, so I apologize. But outside that, please come see us in Highlandtown. We're one of the most unique spaces in Baltimore. There will not be a weekend that we will disappoint. Everything here is fresh and dope. So hopefully we'll see you soon.
There you have it, folks. I want to again thank Jason Steer, Creative Alliance, for coming on to the podcast. And I'm Rob Lee, saying that there's art, culture, and community in and around your neck of the woods. You've just got to look for it.